Hey Ian, I've put on my Bitcoin hoodie to
Yeah,
celebrate the halvening and the
perfect.
special halvening issue of the IanCast. We didn't do it last week, however, this week the halvening happened, I believe, on Monday, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
just this
So
past
we're
week.
going to dedicate this IanCast to the Bitcoin halvening, and we usually start with the market, but let's start with Bitcoin this
Yeah,
week.
for
Let's
sure.
start with Bitcoin this week. Already up to about $9,800. I just looked right before we got on. We're doing this on Thursday evening. So a lot of predictions were that Bitcoin was going to crash post the halvening, and
Right.
instead it's done the opposite.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had the crash to like 4,000 or a little bit below that actually. In some exchanges, it was in like the high 3,000s. That was in March, and then it went back up, like almost tripled, went up to like 10,000, and then right before the halving, some people got scared. I guess there might have been one or two big sellers that might have thought it would crash after the halving, so they sold, went down to 8,000. Now we're right back up to where we were, 10,000, and really this is just the beginning, which we've been saying for a while. And I really do think that it won't be long before we see new highs. And once Bitcoin like passes the all-time high at around 20,000, I think it's going to just shoot straight up basically from there.
That's right, because the best advertising for any asset is a rising price, which
Right.
then draws more of an audience in that wants to participate in the rise, and then that drives really the entire sort of the sort of like the flywheel of
Yep.
what drives the Bitcoin price higher. And I was telling you that the hash rate, given that the reward has been halved, the hash rate is going to collapse. In other words, the fees are going to have to go up, or Bitcoin price is going to have to go up to make it worthwhile for people to go and continue to mine. And so there's a very natural ratcheting effect that's going to happen as people sort of come in and as volume goes up. When the transactions are delayed, that's going to cause even more people to put their orders in faster, which is going to cause a greater delay. And so the price is going to have to go up faster and faster.
Exactly. And I mean, there's less Bitcoin being mined. I did see today that the hash rate was down like 30% from the time the halving happened. So that means basically that the older miners with the worst equipment are going to be forced to like exit, close down their business, exit the industry, leaving the good miners here to get all of that Bitcoin that is now kind of in free for all mode. It was like 25 to 30% of those miners that were mining the Bitcoin with like kind of inferior equipment. All that Bitcoin is going to go to the better miners, is going to keep them in business. So they're going to be able to use their high powered machinery to mine more Bitcoin, and then sell it to us. And we know that the demand isn't going anywhere. The supply is being cut in half. The demand is not going anywhere. And we've seen even like big demand from big, like really, really big names. Like Paul Tudor Jones said he was going to add Bitcoin. I just saw that JP Morgan is now supporting big Bitcoin exchanges like Coinbase. Grayscale, the big Bitcoin trust, is having like record investment in their products. So it's like all around the demand is definitely going up from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like a lot of big announcements, like you said, I mean, Paul Tudor Jones, I believe, is in Bitcoin
Yep.
already. And JP Morgan announced that today. And then I sent you this article talking about how many hedge funds are now including crypto as an asset class that they regularly trade in. So that makes it more liquid, also increases the amount of demand into what is a supply shock.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've shown me so many charts which continue to come out of how hodling is bigger than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. People are like stashing their Bitcoin away from every metric. I mean, from the accounts with a tenth of a Bitcoin all the way up to the accounts with 1,000 or more Bitcoin, which we call the whales. All of those types of buyers are holding or hodling their Bitcoin. They're stashing it away. It's at record numbers of people with those accounts that haven't touched their Bitcoin in at least a year. So it's a great sign, definitely. And yeah, the supply shock is like kind of the opposite of oil, where in the oil market you saw the price like plummet because now there's an oversupply. Bitcoin's really going to do the opposite because now there's not enough supply to satisfy the demand. So it's really just, it has so much upside from here. it could really do the reverse of what oil's done.
And one of the questions that I've gotten is like, well, Paul, well, what would happen, as these prices go up? Wouldn't the number of people go down? Now, you and I both have said, like, we actually think that the demand will rise as the
Right.
price goes up.
Yeah, demand at higher prices. That's true for really any investment, and that's why Bitcoin last time after it broke above the high, I think it was like a little over $1,000, and then it went like straight up to $20,000 within a few months. So the demand definitely does get higher when the price gets higher. When it makes those all-time highs, that's when the fastest rallies happen.
Yeah, and then you saw that amazing stat that I believe between the Cash App and I can't remember the second company, might have been Coinbase. 52% of all mined Bitcoin is just going through these two
Yeah,
exchanges, apps, whatever you want to call it. It's 52%. So any additional demand is going to spike this price up huge.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And also the fact that you can buy Bitcoin out to 7 decimal places. So for
Yeah.
many people who are buying small amounts, especially in international markets, they are not necessarily looking at the price because they're just sort of adding on because they have no choice. Bitcoin is more accessible to them than gold, and they don't want to keep their money in their local currency. Bitcoin is very accessible to them, and they're kind of price insensitive.
Yeah, so like there are these exchanges like local Bitcoins and I can't remember the other name off the top of my head, but there are these two exchanges across the world, and like all over the world in these countries with really high inflation currencies. Paxful is the name of the other exchange. So both of those, local Bitcoins and Paxful, have seen like record demand for Bitcoin, record amounts of buying through those exchanges in like Africa, South America, places where currencies, the fiat currencies, are like super high inflation.
Yeah, another healthy sign as well, which is that there's also a bid underneath Ethereum, Ripple, Bitcoin Cash. A
Right.
whole bunch of cryptos are getting bids. In other words, there's money flooding in beyond Bitcoin to just really for the entire space in general.
Yeah, and stable coins have seen a huge increase in volume too. So people are keeping their money in the exchanges, which is a great sign. They're not just cashing out. Like Tether and USD coin and things like that are seeing record amounts of volume. So yeah, people are keeping their money in there, and then they're just gradually buying more and more Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, all those top ones.
Yeah, and those of you that want to own Bitcoin, there's obviously you can buy it through the Cash App, which many people are doing. Robinhood offers it as well. There's other specialized apps like Coinbase. And then I want to plug as well Profits Unlimited, which is our flagship service at Bold Profits. If you want to own Bitcoin without actually opening up any kind of a crypto account, just through a brokerage account, we found a way for you to do it. If you want to get in on that, click on the strong hands above. That's going to take you to a page. That'll give you all the details on how to subscribe to Profits Unlimited. And then once you subscribe, when you go through our issues, you will see a stock that actually gets you into Bitcoin without actually you owning Bitcoin itself. And the benefits of that, Ian, are that you don't have to deal with opening up a crypto account, which for some people can be complicated. Some banks won't allow transfers. And then also the tax situation, which is that it's still a little bit murky. I know myself dealing with crypto has been like, like I have to deal with that. And
Yeah.
by owning it through a stock, you don't have to deal with all that. So if you want in on that, click on the strong hands above, go to that page, subscribe to Profits Unlimited, gets you into Bitcoin, of course, all of America 2.0 stocks, which we talk about as well. We're going to talk about a little bit later in the IanCast. All right, Ian, speaking of America 2.0,
Yes.
let's do Tesla.
Yeah.
Because Elon Musk is in the news for in some ways Tesla, but like also like to do with like what's going on within the country in terms of like the states opening up. And he decided to go ahead and open up his plant in Fremont, California, ahead of getting official approval from Alameda County, I believe is the county it's on. And people, I think prior to that, were expecting Tesla stock to crash. And instead, once again, the reverse has happened.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, now they're allowed to reopen. They reopened a while ago in China. Now they're reopening here in their Fremont location. So, I mean, that's another thing. Speaking of demand, I mean, there's no shortage of demand for Tesla, so I'm sure they're going to have their work cut out for them once they really get going again. I also saw that they're going to resume their construction on their factory in Germany, which is going to give them even more capacity to make cars. I think they have like a 500,000 vehicle limit in that gigafactory as well. So yeah, things are definitely looking up for Tesla. And as we've mentioned before, they've got their Model Y, they've got the Cybertruck coming out, and they've got their semi truck. So they've got huge catalysts coming up, and I would not be surprised if demand for those were even higher than the demand for the Model 3, because SUVs and pickup trucks are just by default higher demand vehicles, especially in the United States.
Well, the other thing that's happened during this panic crisis, whatever you want to call it, crash, is that its competitors have been significantly weakened.
Yeah,
Ford was cut to junk. GM is struggling. The European automakers are certainly in no better shape than they're probably in slightly better shape than the U.S. automakers. The Japanese automakers largely have no product that really competes with any part of Tesla. And from everything that you and I are reading, it we're also hearing that in every place that has opened back up again, demand for passenger cars is rising, and in many cases, it's like skyrocketing.
yeah,
And and,
right.
and people want EVs. People want EVs.
They do, yeah. So they inherent demand in EVs way higher than ICE cars, internal combustion engine, which actually is seeing falling demand. And EVs is more than making up for it, making the demand for cars in general go up. But yeah, the big automakers like Ford and GM, they made electric vehicles like a side project to try and compete with Tesla. They didn't really have a choice, but still, you're not going to be able to survive with a side project competing with Tesla, which has like a huge market share in the U.S., even like 10% market share in the entire world with just one car. You're not going to be able to compete with them with a side project in your business.
Yeah, I mean, and Tesla semi. I mean, yeah, I mean, people, the Tesla haters come out every time we put a price target on Tesla,
Yeah,
and we've said that we think like actually I think that Tesla is going to surpass 1,000 pretty easily come year.
easily. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be an issue, and I believe it's going to pass that because they've also suggested that the Cybertruck may come ahead of time. The Model Y is already out there in the wild. I believe that they'll be back to deliveries pretty soon. And the other thing that people forget is that Tesla has the post-coronavirus sort of environment all worked out in the sense that they don't have showrooms. They don't have to go personalized selling. All the orders go through their website. They're completely set up for the world that people want.
right. Yeah, online car buying is absolutely the way to go. Nobody likes going to the car dealership. It's a pain. It lasts like all day. I've done it twice, and both times it's been like at least 10 hours, like an all day ordeal to do that. I would much rather just sit at home and order a car from my computer and just do the paperwork online. Super easy.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, even though Elon's been in the news a great deal, Tesla in of itself as a company, again, like so many other America 2.0 companies, has actually increased its lead, and its competitors have sunk really to the point of no return.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see really any competition, at least in the US or anywhere really, that would really be able to like knock off Tesla or even put a dent in them at all.
Right, right. I mean, so going to the next thing we usually cover on the IanCast cannabis, just before coming on, some piece of legislation that is up there at the federal level, that's I believe at the House, is maybe looking to at least, and if not legalize cannabis federally, to at least give banking access to cannabis companies around the country, which is a huge deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise, they have to like keep everything in cash, which is not ideal, not really safe, not practical. But yeah, they've had to put up with some like barely any help at all from banks. And also, I saw that a few of the cannabis companies that we watch have reported, and although the prices haven't really taken off yet, I mean, these businesses are strong. There was Kronos was one of them. They reported 189% growth year over year, so almost tripled their revenue year over year, despite the falling stock price and just the overall bearish attitude towards marijuana, the marijuana stocks. And they still have over $1 billion in cash. The company itself is barely worth twice that. So very low value for that. There was also Tilray with 120% growth year over year, and their U.S. growth was 291%. So almost quadruple their sales in the U.S., which is by far the biggest area where you would want to be if you're selling marijuana right now. There's absolutely huge growth. The best stocks that I would recommend for marijuana are U.S. growers. They're a big part of the MJ ETF, which is what we usually recommend. I still think that has a chance to double this year, even though it's down right now. It's come well off its lows, and I think it's not long before these stocks really start to take off again.
Yeah, and I was tweeting earlier, and I want to mention you can follow Ian and I on Twitter. Ian, you go first.
Yeah, I'm at Ian Dyer Guru.
I am at Mampilly Guru. Also want to tell you, if you like the IanCast, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up, comment below on anything that you want. And we can also, we'll try and address it in the next IanCast, which is that I was tweeting that all of our investments, we try to find that point where there's an imbalance between demand and supply. And I feel like where cannabis prices are pretty much for every stock, the balance is in favor of the moment people want to come in and buy, especially in any kind of scale, they're going to rocket these stocks up.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody's really selling at this point. The people that are in for the long run. Nobody's really, trading these much. There really hardly any selling pressure at all left on them. And actually, I saw that today after these companies report, like the day after, they usually start out the day like a lot lower. They come up as the day moves on. I think that the buying pressure, like any amount, like you said, is going to push them way up.
Yeah. Speaking of buying pressure, moving on to the stock market, a reversal today, starting I think it was about 1:30 or something like that. Maybe some algorithm kicked in, maybe some computer kicked in. Nonetheless, we've been watching what's been going on, and I tweeted out, actually, I said that, it did look like phase one of the market recovery was sort of in the can a few days ago. And we sort of have been cueing that by sort of like what they're not America 1.0. They're kind of like America 1.5, like Apple, Microsoft. They belong like sort of half to the old world and half to the new world. And we've sort of been pegging our expectations based on sort of like those stocks because they still dominate the S&P 500, still dominate the NASDAQ 100, still kind of dominate the NASDAQ composite. However, those smaller stocks that we focus on in Profits Unlimited and across all of our services, those are the ones that are really pushing something like the NASDAQ, composite higher, which is what we've told people, you should really go by. Forget the Dow, forget the S&P 500. The NASDAQ composite is really where you want to be looking at.
Yeah, especially things like software, like cloud software stocks, semiconductors, biotech, XBI, the biotech ETF just made a new high this week. So semiconductors, a lot of those stocks are making new highs. And I saw that on Monday, overall in the market, 110 or 120 stocks made new 52-week highs, which is the highest we've seen since February 21st, which is kind of like the day that this all started, at least in the stock market. So a lot of that strength is in these tech sectors and healthcare, of course, with biotech.
And I continue to get some number of trolling on Twitter and some amount in the YouTube comments as well. It's like, hey, it's due to Fed liquidity. That may all be true. However, from our perspective, we know that no one buys a stock in for what happened yesterday or what happened today. Everyone is betting on something that's going to happen in the future. And everything that we are seeing, we have seen incredibly bullish data. What was the number that the article on housing that I put up, which is that 95%, I think of this company's like, I was it offices or rentals? I mean, apartment rentals, they were paying their rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge percentage. Barely any drop off from the average month. And a lot of people with home buying too, they're not canceling their buying. They're just pushing it back till they can actually go out and are allowed to buy their house. So it's really not much weakness there at all. There's still a lot of demand for homes. And like you said, the renters too are able to pay their rent. So really not much of a dent has been made when it was made out to be this like horrible new Great Depression or whatever, where nobody's going to be able to afford a house, nobody's going to be able to afford their rent. We're seeing that there's hardly any fall off at all. And once those industries, especially home buying, once these housing companies are closing more deals, it's these stocks are going to take off because they're still like 40 to 50% below their all-time highs, a lot of them. So there's a lot of room to go up from here.
And we still have a massive housing shortage in this country as a result of the 2008 crisis, when we didn't really build houses for about a decade. And now we're probably at least probably about 6, 8 years behind relative to the actual demand that's out there.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have the millennials, of course, taking over as the fastest growing group of home buyers. So there's that catalyst too. Gen Z is right behind them. So yeah, everything is definitely pointing in the favor of these stocks. And to get in on that, we would recommend buying ITB, which is a home building ETF.
Right. And generally speaking, we would say that one of the things that I recommend is called the sticks trade. Let me go grab my baseball bat somewhere around here for the sticks trade, which is starts with semiconductors and the VanEck ETF. Then the solar ETF, which is TAN, ITB, which is the one you mentioned, and then also biotechs, XBI, and the last one is industrials, XLI, because we've been using all this stuff and we have not been making it. So the industrial economy is going to come to life, and war is going to be an extraordinary, huge, huge thing.
Yeah, yeah. Once these people are back to work, I mean, the amount of people going to buy things is going to be insane because people have been waiting this whole time to just go out and do something. They're going to go out, they're going to spend their money, and that's going to create a shortage of inventory that's all got to be made. And as a result, a lot of these companies are turning to America 2.0 technologies like 3D printing, automation, graphic design, things like that. So yeah, everything is really going to end up doing even better than it was before once this is all done.
For America 2.0 stocks. On the flip side, there's been plenty of evidence coming out that America 1.0 companies are probably on that last leg. I think over the next 5, 7, 10 years, a lot of the so-called blue chips of yesteryear, many of Warren Buffett's companies, Wells Fargo, people talking about a dividend cut, some of the other companies that previously used to be considered untouchable blue
Yeah.
chips, they're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, even in energy, oil, I don't think will rebound much, the oil stocks at least. And even when the price of oil goes up now, the stocks don't really rebound much. So we have alternative energy, natural gas, we're really taking market share in that. And yeah, industrials in general, all of the old ways of manufacturing are being replaced by these new technologies that are finally going to be like widely adopted, which we've seen already with like making stuff like masks and medical supplies for coronavirus. I think that's really going to be the start of what is a really big like sweeping change in how things are made.
And we'll leave folks with the last thing, which is that I believe that maybe like all over America, we might be the only people that are actually like truly bullish with no caveats, no backsliding, no saying, well, this on the one hand, on the other hand, we are one-handed in the sense that we are bullish, optimistic, positive. We believe that America 2.0 stocks, we believe, are going to keep going up. Nothing happens in a straight line. However, we believe that what is unfolding is going to be a historic, extraordinary, the biggest recovery in American history. And I believe it is going to stun and shock people.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not just a recovery; it's a recovery like plus
That's
technology, all
right.
kinds of new technology.
I mean, there'll only be one word for it. It's going to be a boom, an
Yeah.
extraordinary boom. All right, Ian, we've covered all the ground. It's time for us to say goodbye and say we'll have another IanCast for you next week. You say bye, and I'll wave everyone goodbye.
All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the first weekend of the Bitcoin halving. And I'll talk to you next week.
All right, Ian, and this is Paul saying bye.